People talking shit
People
about
be
Heidi
people.
Loveless. All right, Hardcastle.
Let me embiggen my text.
Hardcastle in 3, 2, 1. Buenos nachos, amigos, and welcome to Record Breakers. Another fantastic episode here, gathered together, talk about music, share music with each other. I'm PETEY, your man with no plan. Here with me is my team, my squad, my crew. We've got Brett.
Nobody received a hero's welcome.
Yes. We've got Drew.
Hey, what's going on?
And we've got Patrick.
Hello, party people.
Yeah. We're here to talk about music, share music. I literally almost said East Asian pop culture, but that's not.
That's right. There are all sorts of East Asian pop culture.
We're here to talk about music. The provider of the music of this week is none other than Brett. Brett, what do you got for us this week?
Well, I just noticed I have the Wikipedia page up for the song Atomic Dog, so I'm going to click the X on that. Sorry, Drew, before you were here, there was a great Atomic Dog question that I had, but we'll save that for later.
Yes.
No, okay, I've been spending way too much time on the salty bets lately, and it caused my consumption of exotic electronic musics to raise way more than it normally would. So in my search for the grooviest 80s electronic future music, I came across Paul Hardcastle, and with it, his self-titled album from 1985, Paul Hardcastle.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, this is going to be an interesting discussion. Patrick, what were your expectations coming into this?
I'm coming in blind other than the references to sort of this being like 80s synth pop / somehow related to the Outrun genre of music that is a thing now apparently. So I'm coming in blind. I just know it was 80s synth pop since that's sort of what Brent alluded to it being. And that being something I generally enjoy, although I am unfamiliar with this.
Mm-hmm. Drew, what were your expectations coming into this album?
Brett said it was going to be a softball, so I expected it to be really good. And I expected, after he said everyone that does Outrun kind of wants to be this, I expected it to be groovy, filled with fuzzy synthy bass licks, and probably some keys of a similar variety that would give me a grooving. But besides that, I had no idea.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, let's get into it. The Outrun reference definitely makes sense because it's definitely an origin for a lot of things in that genre and other similar genres that have come out through the years. But Brett, how would you describe this album musically? What would be the themes, elements that make it up?
Well, there's obviously a focus on the dance beats. If you go to the Spotify track list, you'll see there are break-in remixes for when you really need to extend the brakes out while you're spinning on your head, doing the sextuple head spin or whatever. But yeah, everything on this album sounds like it's from an 80s action movie soundtrack. Everything from the drum machines to the crazy weird synth horns. There's quite a lot going on when it comes to just the strange electro dance songs. But when you unwind the mess of synth, you see some pretty well crafted compositions that would work in an analog arrangement just as well. I will say there are some ridiculous vocals, and at times I think this album is at its best without those vocals, but I think that the vocals add something very, very, very tangible to this album, and I think that adds a little dose of the foundations of electronic music need to be just as cheesy as it is for it to be as funny as it is to go back to. Mm-hmm. So
yeah. There's one thing that I definitely caught in these moments reminding of is a recent album that we talked about that I picked was Spam All Stars. They had some elements that borrowed from some sounds like that come out of this, which is cool. But yeah, Patrick, what would be the themes on this that caught your attention?
I think like Brett alluded to, this is like essential listening if you're someone who likes EDM. Like even if it's just Daft Punk and like the really popular stuff, the stuff you would expect. This is very foundational to what EDM ultimately became in the 90s, and now even 30 some years later, you can hear stuff, ideas and concepts that are still part of like modern electro house and dubstep. And as we've probably established on the show, occasionally I like that stuff. So like stylistically, this is very much, this is the synth sounds maybe you heard in early 80s pop music, but it's only synths and drum machines. It's pure, like, for lack of a better word, a lack of a better term, electronic dance music. This is, it gets synth poppy at times, but this is really meant to be played in clubs. It sounds like 1985, and you have to be comfortable with that being okay and understanding that technologically, this is what synthesizers sound like in the mid 80s. But in terms of the quality of the music, like, you can kind of tell this guy, like, was, trained in such a manner that, he later kind of became more known for doing jazz stuff. Like, this is really, really well executed music in a style that's kind of, it's really easy to make this style a parody of itself, and this manages not to do it.
Well, yeah, it's because it's kind of one of the originators, or like at least close to that.
It's like reading your history in school. This is like listening to your history. If you're into EDM, it's your homework.
Mm-hmm. Drew, what would be the themes on this that caught your attention?
This album, something about it was just purely fun to me. Yeah, there's, like, I've been getting into, like I said before, I believe I've been getting sort of into the, like, new retro wave and, like, Outrun and, like, the whole vaporwave aesthetic and all that sort of BS weird synthy electronic music that is super synth poppy and super fun and super retro, right? But there's something about this, like, 1985, right? And you can hear, like, this is like a perfect chunk of like what those artists are trying to like harken back to as far as like old 80s like new wave sort of electronica music, which I think is really cool. And the weird part that hit me about this was there's a Vietnam protest song on this record that was like, okay. Like, I was really, really surprised. Because usually, like, this type of music I associate with, like, no lyrics. And then, like, the lyrics in this one say things that are actually poignant and pointed and kind of cool, which is really weird. But it never loses that synth pop fun to me. The bass in this record is just something to behold. Like, it reminds me of why I picked the bass as the instrument that I wanted to learn, right? Like, it's just a lot of fun. There's nothing about this record that I didn't have fun with.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And speaking of not only a Vietnam protest song, but as we've learned since, an apocryphal, at least slightly apocryphal, Vietnam. Well, at least one fact that wraps it is actually technically not correct or unproven, which is hilarious. To kind of like you hear that, it's like, oh, what? Yeah. But yeah, speaking of songs, and we're probably gonna be focusing on that sound because that is the hit. But yeah, speaking of songs, Brett, what would be some of the key tracks to point out?
Well, when it comes to 80s electronic music songs covering the Vietnam War by a man from London, 19 has to be the only one. There's not really a whole lot of these out there in the world, but the fact that I live in a world in which there is a Vietnam War hot take dance song, like people were popping cassettes into their ghetto blasters and popping and locking to that, like, makes me smile inside and pretty happy. Very, very noteworthy. Musically, it is what you think of. It is. This is partially the song that brung me to this album. This is another one that is way different. But this is a top tier song. This is an inner circle of groovy tunes song. Like I think this is about as perfect as you can get with with the right amount of weird, and with the juxtaposition of this is electronic dance music from the 80s. This is doing things that like you couldn't even imagine doing when Hulk Rules was around, and this was done 10 years before Hulk Rules. But not unlike Hulk Rules, the song "Strollin'" is like a Sega Genesis platformer that just didn't have a soundtrack, and it got lost on this album. It's such a jaunty song with a pretty amazing bass line. There's something about synth flutes that always remind me of the Secret of Mana soundtrack, because like when you had the ability to make music on a Super Nintendo, they're like, bring me these crappy synth like woodwind instruments, and I really like synth flutes, and then there's bitchin' funk organ. Can't go wrong with funk organ. It's right up there with hardcore Pentecostal organ. But yeah, there's pretty awesome stuff going there. And then Rainforest is another solid track that I heard before I decided to have this musical experiment with you guys. Another song of note is the Destruction mix of the song 19 is a song that floats around the internet from time to time, and that is the cut in which I originally heard. And I don't exactly know which playlist, but I tell you what, Spotify playlist will take you some places if you want to hear some weird 80s electronic music. So yes. Those are some good songs. All these songs are like way overwritten and overperformed, and you can pick each one of them apart, but those really stuck with me.
Mm-hmm. Patrick, what would be some of the key tracks for you?
19, just because it's like the quote unquote single, but also like kind of a fun song, but also like setting the standard for random pseudo philosophical shit mixed into an EDM track. Something that has continued 30 years on from it. But as like it very much like the spoken word as a part of a dance track has never gone away, and I assume this is a relatively early occurrence of that as a stylistic choice. But the music's good. It's fun. The vocal hook's fun. It's an okay song. Don't waste my time. This is, I think, a really just good, like, poppy dance song. The synths are very, like, Super Nintendo-y. Just probably because that was the horsepower a synth had in 1985 that a game console would have, 7 or 8 years later. And it had a nice rhythm and a bounce to it that I really enjoyed. And then Moonhopper. which I feel like when Brett said this album is like what Outrun, wants to be, this is it. This song is Midnight Tokyo 1985 in a 300ZX on the Wangan Highway. This song, it has TurboGrafx and turbine wheels. It wears members only jackets unironically, and it has a mustache. It's a great song. I really, really liked it. I like when a song can take me to a time and place, and this song really, it gave me that vibe of late night highway 80s street race, and with TurboGrafx and turbine wheels, because I'm a sucker for that sort of shit.
Mm-hmm. Drew, what would be some of the key tracks for you?
I think 19 needs to be mentioned because, as I said, it's a Vietnam protest song on a synth pop record, and that's fucking weird. I heard that and I was like, wait. I don't often go back at the end of a song and immediately re-listen to it again while I listen to records for this show. That was an exception because I was like, wait a second, was I just dancing to protest music? Yeah, kind of did. I kind of danced in my chair to protest music, and I'm okay with that. There is a song on here called Don't Waste My Time that the bass on that track reminded me of one of the best Sega games of all time, and that would be Toe Jam and Earl. That song is Toe Jam and Earl as fuck, and it's great, and I loved everything about that bass line. That's not even mentioning that the vocal provided by Carol Kenyon is absolutely fantastic. But god dang it, that bass is Toe Jam and Earl as fuck. That's awesome. Toe Jam and Earl is great. And then Rainforest. Rainforest is you barrel down city streets at midnight listening to this song. It is fantastic. It is my sign of a good 80s if you're trying to emulate the 80s new wave electronica sound in this retro wave, new retro wave Outrun thing that people are doing, my litmus test is, can at least one of your songs make me feel like I'm in a cyberpunk dystopia? And Rainforest did that to me in a really great way. I really, really enjoyed that one. And it was the last song on the original cut of the record. There is lots, as Brett said, lots of remixes that you can find out there that were tacked onto the end of this record, and they're all good. But I think the record ended in a really cool way with Rainforest. I really dug that song.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and I like that in the middle of you talking about Rainforest, you got the thunder going on in the Miami sky. Kind of drumming it in, kind of providing a nice soundtrack for you. But yes, let's bring it back around the horn quickly, get some conclusive thoughts so we can end this episode before the power cuts. Or I don't know what's going to happen. I'm always scared when there's thunder going on where we're recording. I'm like, let's end the episode I can save. Patrick, what would be your conclusions on this album as a whole?
This is, I like 80s synth pop, specifically the more poppy side of it, but this is, I also really enjoy a lot of EDM, specifically Daft Punk and sort of electro house, and you can really, really hear where that all traces itself back to in this, more so than disco that came before this. This is sort of where, it's programmed drums, all sorts of synths. There was at least what I thought was a crazy synth guitar on this album. I'm not sure if it was a keyboard solo or a synth guitar, but there's a lot of cool stuff here. Is it the greatest thing I've ever heard? No, because it's, it sounds like 1985, but it also feels like when at some point in your life you took a history class with the right history teacher and you learned something that connected to you and what you're interested in that you didn't know before. It's very much I feel like this should be homework for any EDM fan. Like, know your roots, know where it came from, because this is really well executed. The quality of the music's very high, despite the relatively limited instrumentation available at the time for electronic music, and I really enjoyed listening to it.
Drew, what would be your conclusion on this album as a whole?
There's a playlist that I have been sort of putting stuff from like some Monster Cat stuff here and there, some like stuff from like 2014 and St. Pepsi and stuff like that. That's just cool synthy cyberpunky 80s shit that I've found. This is more than a couple of tracks from this has made it into that playlist already. And more Paul Hardcastle will find his way into that playlist pretty quickly. It is something that I think is, when I just want something to put on that's just a lot of fun, that will get me motivated to do things, whatever those things may be at the time. This is the type of music I go to. And like I said, it's already made one of my playlists. It's already going to be in regular rotation. It's something that I think a lot of people should listen to, no matter what you think about electronic music, because you can kind of hear something here that I think is kind of special.
Yeah, it is ultimately just a fun record. It's a deep record, and it's a really cool record to kind of break down. But at the end of the day, it's also just a really fun record. Fun to listen to, fun to kind of groove to, fun to just play in the background while things happen, while you do
smoke
work,
weed every day,
while you do chores, while you do all kind of things. Yeah, it's just a cool, fun record, fun bit of nostalgia, and you get to see the roots of a lot of things in this one record. Yeah, Brett, what would be your conclusion on this album as a whole?
Well, I imagine there are a lot of people that can and would write this music off as being a novelty and dated, but I think that the importance of the 80s electronic music soaking into the fabric of time and leading it to be such a novelty, dated style of music these days, where you look back and you think, like, man, people thought that was the pinnacle of music. But the fact that had such an impact on everyone's reaction also can be seen in how many genres branched off from this very, very proto electronic music. And I've brought Kraftwerk and other stuff before, but this is more of a guy who this is more on the lines of like a Herbie Hancock making a rocket, and Herbie Hancock also being able to do other things than making weird music. This is a musician who has chops, but also likes to play with electronics, and I think that you can sort of see how that has changed music forever, from weird sproing noises that I hear in albums to entire weird Steve Miller-esque lines that we heard in Chromeo, let's say. But this is the soundtrack that plays inside of my head as I live my Sega Genesis life, and this is what I call pretty much about as flawless of a music genre as you can get, with the amount of weird to skill to fun. This is about as good as it gets for me.
Yeah, those are our thoughts on Paul Hardcastle. Roll Fizzle Beef, Blast Heart Cheese. Nick Bachman.
Big McLarge huge.
Now we get to the main event of the evening. We get to our haiku reviews. What we've all been waiting for. The important gimmick of the show. Let's get to our haikus. Patrick, what is your haiku?
Quality synth pop, the roots of music I love, EDM homework.
Mm-hmm. Drew, what is your haiku?
Some great funky bass. Some great funky bass. Sorry. All the 80s you can take. This is playlist bound.
Mm-hmm.
Well, that's what I call music.
That's what I call music.
Volume 79.
Yes. My haiku. Outrun Origins, Dream Neon Miami Nights, Drive with the Top Down. Brett, what is your haiku?
I pop and I lock. Music from a British man. Some real groovy tunes. Refrigerator, a Bobo refrigerator.
Yeah. Paul Hardcastle.
Did we just get an Abobo reference? Can I tell you how important Abobo was to my high school life?
Now, you leave a Bobo alone. He's out there being green, looking all fucked up, having a rough go of things.
Yes. Of course, Paul Hardcastle, you can find him on our Spotify playlist. I'll probably just drop in the album, but you can, of course, use that to say view full album and listen to all the remixes and all of that on Spotify. Also, presumably on that Spotify playlist will be next week's record, provided by Drew. Drew, what do you got us? What do you got for us this next week?
What you got us?
What you got us go and do next week on that?
I think the next 3 albums, I've decided what bands I'm going to use. I'm just trying to decide on the albums because I'm super pumped for a show I'm going to see in July. And we're going to start with the opening act for the show. A band from New Jersey, a great punk band in my eyes. And I've decided to go with what many will consider their classic. I was weighing between this and Anchors Away. But we're going to do Hopeless and Romantic from the Bouncing Souls.
Mm-hmm. Bouncing Souls, no one can beat them. They drink beer and wear Adidas.
So some people from your camp of indie wrestling fans may recognize the song Ole. So we'll get into that though, I'm sure.
For reasons. But yes, Bouncing Souls next week. Look forward to that fun discussion. It's definitely gonna be a fun discussion, and it's gonna be a fun album to listen to. But that'll be then, and this is now. And you can, of course, find us all over the internet. Patrick is at Swagger. Brett is at HIBBARD, HIBBI2YPIBBARD. Drew is at X4X. I'm at PETEY RAVE. The show is at 4 Record. The show is at 4 Record Breakers. That's the number 4 Record Breakers. RecordBreakersPodcast.com. RecordBreakersPodcast@gmail.com. Rebelli TV on YouTube. If you're sticking around, the album should be available to click to download from iTunes right next to me by now. And you'll also get the subscribe links later for the last 10 seconds of the episode. But yeah, do all the things. Share, like, subscribe, using them. Until next time, hasta los huevos.
Whose average age was 19. Toodaloo.
Sanitations.
Destruction.